Hello, I'm Jake, aka HamStuff, and this is going to be very wordy. I'm really quite verbose as a video. It's definitely best to watch the whole thing, but the crux of the matter is this. There is no Megatsunami. There is not going to be a Megatsunami from the Cumbre Vieja volcano on the island of La Palma. It's utter bollocks. And this is a video I've extensively researched in order to debunk this ludicrous notion. Hello, I'm Jake, aka HamStuff, and this is the location of the Yellowstone caldera, the volcano I covered last time I made one of these videos. And much like last time, it's not erupting and it's not due for an eruption. But if we come more over here, this location here, La Palma in the Canary Islands and the Cumbre Vieja volcano. As it says, Cumbre Vieja volcano eruption. This is erupting. This has been quite a difficult video to film, so I've decided to split it into three parts. What's been happening at La Palma, the earthquake swarm, and new inflation, and the onset of eruption, and things that have happened with that. What is this Megatsunami theory, and debunking it with what actual scientists have to say. So, first thing. What's been happening on the island of La Palma and with the Cumbre Vieja volcano? What are these earthquake swarms? And what are these funky coloured diagrams I've seen? With the latter, an interferogram, I'll get to one of those in just a few moments. So we begin on Twitter. Not always the best source of information, but I thought the Canary Islands Volcanology Institute would be a good thing to look at. And we have the evolution of seismicity located by the Canary Islands Seismic Network under the island of La Palma for 2 weeks up to the, I assume, the 25th of September when this was posted. So an earthquake swarm is basically when a lot of earthquakes happen within a small-ish area over an amount of time. And as you can see, there's all these circles for earthquakes are just like swarming together as if they were bees. I saw somebody with a diagram that looks a lot like this, but they were claiming that it means the entire island is going to fall off. Well, according to Pablo J. Gonzalez, these are his credentials, seems like he knows what he's talking about. Impressive ground deformation signal of the dike feeding the Cumbre Vieja fissure eruption. Okay, very pretty picture, a lot of nice colours. I don't know what that means, and he said nothing about an earthquake causing half the island to fall off. So I reached out to Hawaii Volcano Observatory, Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, and INGV, the Italian Geophysical Institute, or something similar. So I said, good evening, morning, afternoon. You've now heard about the eruption of Cumbre Vieja and the supposed notion that the west flank is due for collapse, which will generate a megatsunami. I'm researching for a video to help debunk this ridiculousness. I was talking with Dr. Janine Krippner, Smithsonian Global Volcanism Program, and a man that has probably finished secondary school brought up the first of the below images. Like I said, a man said that half the island's going to fall off and this is somehow proof. I won't make the mistake that he did in pretending I know what it means. What I also cannot tell you is when this image was taken by the Sentinel-1 satellite. Now I believe this is, this image here. So I did later find a source for this. The same image retweeted by Volcano, was captured impressive ground deformation signal of the dike feeding the Cumbre Vieja fissure eruption. And then, when it was taken. The second image, I cannot find the source for, I since have, over here, I believe to be from Volcano, also appears to be in Interferogram. Hopefully anyone that specialises in these who I could use as a source to ensure my video about is informative and accurate. The Italians, I just got an automated reply. Hawaii weren't especially helpful, but from Mike Poland, who I have spoken to before. Hi Jake, I might be able to help you with the interpretation since I work on interferograms also. The interferogram of La Palma shows deformation associated with magma as it rose to the surface. I imagine some people are using this and similar images to indicate that the flank is going to collapse and there will be a massive tsunami that wipes out the east coast of the USA. First of all, that whole Megatsunami theory has been debunked. You can read more about it on these particular links, and I will get to those later. And second, the deformation shown in the interferograms is exactly what you would expect from a volcanic eruption like this. We saw the same thing in Hawaii in 2018 during that eruption, and many other eruptions of Kilauea Volcano and in Iceland due to the current eruption and one in 2014 to 15, etc. There's more information about how to interpret interferograms on these particular websites, on these links. I hope this is helpful. Best wishes. How to interpret an interferogram. Since the early 1990s, scientists have used radar satellites to map movement or deformation of Earth's surface. Interferometric synthetic aperture radar, so that's 3 times correctly, calculates the difference between two radar images acquired by an orbiting satellite taken at different times but looking at the same place on Earth. So basically, that's what it is. That's what an interferogram is. I'm not going to read through all of it, but I'll put a link in the description. And then from the USGS Volcano Hazards Program, more about INSAR. Satellite-based technique captures overall deformation picture. It is a technique for mapping ground deformation using radar images of the Earth's surface collected from orbiting satellites. Unlike visible or infrared light, radar rays penetrate most weather clouds and are equally effective in darkness. So with INSAR, it is possible to track ground deformation even in bad weather and at night. Two big advantages during a volcanic crisis. So two radar images of the same area that were collected at different times from a similar vantage point in space can be compared against each other. Any movement of the ground surface toward or away from the satellite can be measured and portrayed as a picture, not of the surface itself, but how much the surface moved or deformed during the time between images. Images provided by space agencies in Italy, Germany, Canada, Japan, Korea, Europe, and the US. And there's more about it here. So it doesn't show likelihood of falling off, it doesn't show half the island's going to collapse, and how much the island is deformed is often measured in centimetres. About the size of your finger, or the width of your finger as opposed to length. So yeah, it doesn't seem like a lot, and on the grand scheme of things it isn't, but with a mountain, ostensibly, is what most volcanoes are. Imagine a mountain growing in size by a centimetre. That's a lot of rock that has to move. And then... So, I did find a source that an image. It's here, and this shows you how much the ground surface has moved. If I find more information about this, I'll put it in the description, but this comes from the Geological and Mining Institute of Spain, a reputable source. Don't trust just anybody on Twitter. The only reason you should trust me is because I've cited my sources. So, there was fears this would indeed lead to an eruption, and that is exactly what happened. And as of recording, the eruption's still ongoing. So this was from September the 23rd. A new lava flow map of the current eruption site has been published and updated today. If it says they've put the same thing twice, it's because one was in Spanish, and I translated it. It has since reached the sea. Dawn in the Canary Islands. On BD Canarias TV, we take over from our colleagues with these images live from the port of Tazacorte, where that lava flow continues to arrive that yesterday broke away from the main.
Canarias, esa es la imagen que nos llega en directo desde el puerto de Tazacorte, donde están llegando esas coladas de lava. El volcán sigue rugiendo con fuerza, pero se descarta, al menos de momento, que pueda abrirse una nueva boca en algún punto distinto de la principal. Ayer se produjo un seísmo de 4,3 grados en el sureste de la isla.
Well, Spanish is a lovely language, but not one I speak. If you know what they're saying in the video, please do let me know in the comments, because I'd love to know more. And then after it reached the sea, these are the 29 hectares, one from the sea yesterday, hashtag Fajana, or Lava Delta, image taken by drone from Capital Palma on October the 5th, or the 5th of October. So 3 days prior to recording this section of the video, we saw a similar lava delta in the 2018 Kilauea eruption, basically new land that's been formed by molten rock encountering the sea and cooling down. So what exactly is this whole Megatsunami thing? Why are people so worried that half the volcano is just going to fall off into the ocean, generating the enormous tsunami? Well, let's take a look. A lot of this is because of a fear-mongering documentary, using the term loosely, from the BBC back in the year 2000. Scattered across the world's oceans are a handful of rare geological time bombs. Let's have a bit of a zoom in, shall we? Geological time bombs. Once unleashed, they create an extraordinary phenomenon. A gigantic tidal wave far bigger than any normal tsunami, able to cross oceans and ravage countries on the other side of the world. Only recently have scientists realised the next episode is likely to begin at the Canary Islands off North Africa, where a wall of water will one day be created, which will race across the entire Atlantic Ocean at the speed of a jet airliner to devastate the east coast of the United States. America would have been struck by a Megatsunami. Well, according to their same documentary, it will flood Britain and Europe as well, so I don't know if it was focused on America exclusively. So back in 1953, 2 geologists travelled to the remote bay in Alaska looking for oil. They gradually realised that in the past the bay had been struck by huge waves and wondered what could have possibly caused them. 5 years later, they got their answer. In 1958, there was a landslide in which a towering cliff collapsed into the bay, creating a wave half a kilometre high, higher than any skyscraper on Earth. The true destructive potential of landslide-generating tsunami, which scientists named Megatsunami, suddenly began to be appreciated. What if a modest-sized landslide in Alaska? If a modest-sized landslide in Alaska could create a wave this size, what havoc would a really huge landslide cause? There's more of this. You can read it if you like. Either pause or check the link in the description. So, here we are. Megatsunami, questions and answers. When will the volcano on La Palma collapse? The collapse of the western flank of the Cumbre Vieja volcano on the southern half of La Palma is not going to happen tomorrow or next week. Tourists should not cancel their holidays to the Canary Islands or to the east coast of the United States or the Caribbean. What scientists are predicting is the collapse is likely to happen at any time within the next few thousand years. Scientists also note that a collapse will not happen without any warning. They'll be able to alert people to possible dangers several weeks in advance. So, this seems more erring on the side of caution, rather than doom and gloom. So, the BBC, I assume, got their information from this scientific paper. Cumbre Vieja Volcano, Potential Collapse of Tsunami at La Palma, Canary Islands by Stephen Ward and Simon Day. The abstract. Geological evidence suggests that during a future eruption, Cumbre Vieja Volcano on the island of La Palma may experience a catastrophic failure of its west flank, dropping 150 to 500 kilometers squared of rock into the sea. Using a geologically reasonable estimate of landslide motion, we model tsunami waves produced by such a collapse, waves generated by the runout of 500 kilometers squared, 150 kilometers squared, so that's our maximum and the minimum. Slide block at 100 meters squared can translate the entire Atlantic basin and right on the coast of the Americas with a 10 to 25 meter or at minimum through to 8 meter height. So there are a lot of pages to this. Well, 4 pages. More than I can go through in a YouTube video. You can feel free to read this. Link in the description. But, lateral collapses of oceanic island volcanoes rank amongst the most spectacular natural events on Earth. Although no such lateral collapse punctuates the historical past, which, in my opinion, would indicate they're not especially frequent, any given collapse isn't enormously likely to happen. Residual debris found on the seafloor evidence their abundance in recent geological time. By Moore in 1964, first identified the remains of a lateral collapse of the flanks of Hawaii. Since then, dozens have been recognised adjacent to island volcanoes in nearly every ocean. Moore et al. In 1994, Keating and McGuire in 2000. These observations constrain not only the geography and frequency of lateral collapses, but also their magnitude up to 5,000 kilometers squared in material, extent up to 300 kilometers in length, and ferocity of underwater speed up to 140 meters per second. I'll read this next block of text and then move on. Tsunami list among the many hazards associated with lateral collapses. Admittedly, direct geological evidence of tsunami in identifiable deposits, Moore and Moore, 1984, or coastal erosion features, Young and Bryant, 1992, are controversial. Still, history has documented large and damaging tsunami from far smaller lateral collapses or stratovolcanoes in island arc environments. Johnson 1984, Satake and Kato 2001. Prudence dictates that the lack of abundant wave-core signatures associated with collapses of oceanic island volcanoes be viewed as more a function of scanty preservation than evidence that these events do not produce tsunami. Hazard from the collapse tsunami may be particularly important in the Atlantic Ocean because of both the number of active oceanic islands there are and the recent proposals of Day et al. In 1999A and 1999B. I'm sure they're linked somewhere below. That at least 2 of these volcanoes show signs of incipient instability. It seems timely then for this paper to investigate the consequences of tsunami waves induced by collapse of these unstable volcanoes, Cumbre Vieja on the island of La Palma, Canary Islands, which is in figure 1, which I believe is this here. Given part of the town I live in is right next to a river, I'm quite glad that this whole Megatsunami thing has been debunked by, oceanographers, volcanologists, and other geologists. So, let's go have a look at what they have to say. And remember that warning at the start of the video? This is the most wordy part of all. From the Global Volcanism Program, September the 17th, this year, before the eruption began. There is currently a seismic swarm under Cumbre Vieja volcano on the Palma in the Canary Islands, interpreted as a magmatic intrusion that may result in eruption. Fearmongers are once again posting about a mega tsunami, which is extremely low probability. See links in thread. I'm just going to read the little snapshot that they've posted, rather than the whole thing, other than, because this video would otherwise be very long indeed. So, here's an excellent short 2013 blog by Day Petley. Previous flank collapses have occurred as a series of distinct events. They would not have generated a mega tsunami. There is no reason to believe that a future event will behave differently. Another two-part blog by the same gentleman about the La Palma landslide hypothesis concluded again, this is not the disastrous scenario that the newspapers have so enjoyed featuring. Summary from NOC News. The National Oceanography Centre. Okay. During the 2017 seismicity at La Palma, by Dr. James Hunt, there is currently no evidence of past tsunamis reaching coastlines along the North Atlantic. The tsunami models utilize worst-case scenario values to track what is happening. With the seismic swarm, please follow at IGN Spain and at InVulcan here on Twitter or via their websites. There will also be regular summaries in Smithsonian/USGS Weekly Volcanic Activity Report. A much more in-depth analysis was published by George Paravis Karayanis, I may have butchered that, in Science of Tsunami Hazards, web version, and there's a link. All this wouldn't be included in the description. No mega tsunamis can be expected even if the lateral collapses of Bolivia occur as postulated. But of course, Joe blogs on Twitter thinks that he knows more. Yes, I'm sure you in particular know more than the Global Volcanism Program. So, from InVulcan themselves, the Instituto Volcanologico de Canarias, translated from Spanish, Old Combustibility, the Palm. The recent volcanic reactivation in the Palma has once again sparked the debate on the stability of the west flank of the island, and in particular the volcanic building of the old summit, a recurring issue for decades raising concern in society. For 20 years now, when some researchers will affirm the possibility that there could be a major collapse of the west side of the old summit, and as a result of this generation of a megatsunami, fear has been transmitted over such a catastrophic event. Although this hypothesis has been rebutted and later discarded by numerous researchers, surprisingly some media continues to talk about this catastrophic event of a large gravitational slide over the west flank of the old summit volcano. This hypothesis involved the existence of a surface of geologic weakness of large extent, continuity and depth consisting of basal layer formed by materials from previous sites, the so-called mortallon, and presence of an almost vertical fracture approximately north-south direction, tens of miles long and several miles deep. limiting the east side to the purported old summit side. The layer of Mortallon has been verified in numerous galleries, wells, tunnels, and poles. The Great Fracture has not been able to see its continuity and depth, so the condition on which the theory of slide is primarily based would not change from simple hypothesis. However, considering the resilient properties of Mortallon, the island's current geometry, geological structure, layered inclination, etc., Old Summit would be stable even in the face of future eruptive episodes and associated seismicity, like is happening currently, according to geomechanical models and stability analytics carried out, where consideration has been given to magma injection pressures, seismic accelerations, influence interstitial pressures, etc. For the old summit's flank to meet conditions close to instability would have to occur simultaneously an exceptionally high magnitude earthquake and a large magnitude volcanic eruption, or for the current volcanic building to reach its natural growth at least 1,000 meters more about the current maximum elevation. To reach this height, more than 40,000 years would have to go by, referring to the average growth rate of the island over the last million years. On the other hand, the probability of an eruption with a high explosive rate at the same time as large earthquake is extremely remote, according to the geological record of such events on the island. Therefore, Old Summit is stable, even under the effects of eruptions similar to those that occurred in the last tens of thousands of years. These results are part of several research projects on large gravitational landslides and megatsunamis, which researchers from the Volcanological Institute of Canary Islands in Vulcan have been involved. This comes from Luis Gonzalez de Villaggio, hopefully I haven't butchered that, Director of the Geological Risks area of Vulcan, and he's an honorary professor at Complutense University of Madrid. And the picture was taken by Sergio Socorro. So, going to what Dr. Rebecca Williams has to say. Seismic storms are common at volcanoes. They may or may not indicate an eruption is going to occur. The La Palma Megatsunami idea has been debunked. Here's an explainer. Could flank collapse? I do believe that's this one. Even with shoaling, the wave would not present significant hazard. Inappropriate media attention and publicity to such probabilistic results created unnecessary anxiety that megatsunamis may be imminent and may devastate densely populated coastlines at locations distant from the source, both in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Recent numerical modelling studies forecasting megatsunami generation have been based on incorrect assumptions about volcanic island slope, instability, source dimensions, speed of failure, and tsunami coupling mechanisms. And there's a couple of articles about understanding the landslide hypothesis. Landslides and volcanoes occur. These can cause tsunamis. These would have dramatic local consequences. What is being debunked here is the idea that a wave will sweep around the Atlantic, destroying cities on the Atlantic seaboard and further inland. Recent research demonstrates that the Palma is currently stable, and I do believe this is the same link we've already visited. The post from In Vulcan I've already read through. So, due to all this, I asked her, am I correct in thinking that the flank that's supposedly going to fall off didn't move at all during the 1971 eruption? The last time Cumbre Vieja erupted around 50 years ago. Well, pretty much 50 years ago. Give or take some days, weeks, and months. In a word, yes. How much of this is there? Okay. So I'll read the beginning and the end. The rest of it you're free to check out yourself. Link will be in the description. So this is from 2017. Responding to the recent low-level seismic activity on the Canary Island of La Palma, the NOC's Dr. James Hunt said, "It is debatable whether an eruption will ensue on La Palma. What magnitude such an eruption would reach should one occur, and whether the volcanism would be enough to cause a flank collapse and tsunami. Even if a tsunami was generated, there was a great deal of uncertainty about how big it would be as it travels from the source towards coastlines. There's currently no evidence of past tsunamis reaching coastlines along the North Atlantic from past Canary Islands landslides. The tsunami models commonly cited in reference to landslide and megatsunami in the Canary Islands utilize worst-case scenario values that have large uncertainty. To answer any questions you may have on this topic, NOC scientists put together a question and answer feature based upon the evidence from NOC's ongoing research into marine geohazards. So that's this here. So earthquakes don't always result in eruption. This time, yes, they did, but in 2017, they did not. And the earthquakes are too small to generate, failure and landslide. So the summary: flank collapses and associated tsunamis in the Canary Islands represent low probability events that would be highly destructive. So low probability. And if it were to collapse, it would indeed be destructive. But the idea of that happening is what is mostly being debunked. Whilst there are earthquake swarms beneath La Palma, as yet there is no evidence of volcanic activity manifested at the surface, and thus risk is low and without evidence of escalation. The risk and potential hazards linked to eruptions on La Palma include landslides, tsunamis. We will have to be re-evaluated if escalation occurs. So, unfortunately, nobody's saying it's impossible, but what would happen in this scenario, which is drastically less likely than you'd be led to believe, would not be as destructive as you've been led to believe. Think about a newspaper, or the evening news on the television, or the news you see trending on Twitter. When did you last see everything is fine? When was everything is fine headline news? The news needs views. Newspapers need to be bought. No one's giving their time and their money to hear everything is fine. So unfortunately, a little scaremongering is in order. And one thing they've been scaremongering about are landslides. Just like this one. Which, knowing it's on a volcano and there's meant to be this great landslide and a mega tsunami, may look pretty scary and dramatic. Now, there's a boat there. If I compare the size of that to the size of that, it doesn't look very mega, and there's absolutely no sign of tsunami. Effect of landslides on the cliffs of Tazacorte. Caution with sensational headlines. Go to official sources. From Volcanos de Canaries. Breaking Spain, Canary Islands. Landslides reported. Oh, let's take a look.
Cuidado, cuidado porque la cosa... Parece un derrumbe de momento. De momento es un derrumbe, sí.
Now, I don't know what side of the island this is on, but what I do know, the boats here are entirely unperturbed. This has not generated enough of a wave to disturb the boats in the slightest. This is not the massive landslide that you have heard about. Landslides happen. And you, as I said, and look how utterly perturbed these boats are. And yes, sources are a very good thing to have. This is fake unless you post the sources. There is some truth in what they say, in my opinion. However, with videographic evidence, I'm sure we can assume it actually happened. Real question is, when did it happen? They uploaded the video on September the 26th. It could have been before then. But if we take this at face value, that it happened on September the 26th of this year, during the eruption, this is not Megatsunami generating. I've just spent the last I don't know how many minutes reading what scientists had to say in order to debunk this. If you hear about landslides from La Palma, this is what you're hearing about. It doesn't seem all that dramatic. So, to conclude, should you prepare for some sort of natural disaster? Yeah, honestly. But not because of this. The Earth can be a dangerous place, and bad things can and do happen. And being prepared is a good idea. Scaremongering, on the other hand, not as good an idea. You simply don't need to worry about this ridiculous mega tsunami idea. I'll link all my sources down below and extra information you can find, along with a recommendation of a YouTube channel, Bushcraft Bear. He's a man that lives on the island, and while most news sources are in Spanish, he actually speaks English, which I'm sure Spanish is a lovely language, but it's not one that probably most people speak. So, news sources far away from the islands might not have the best idea of what is happening compared to news sources from the island. But of course, one I'm much easier able to understand. So, Bushcraft Bear is, I'll link his channel down below, a really good way of finding out what is happening with the eruption on the volcano from a man that actually lives there. In the meantime, take a deep breath, relax, like, subscribe, and share the video.